Everybody, and welcome to EDM8004 Teacher Identity, your final placement course, looking where you implement your internship, which is now called your unsupervised placement. So my name is Tanya Leach and I'm your course examiner, and I am really pleased tonight to introduce you to the teacher of EDM8004, Michael, and he's going to introduce himself in a moment so that you can, I guess, know a little bit about us and our backgrounds. So the tutorials are designed to be interactive. We have a reflective component of them, and then we also have something that we would co-construct or reflect upon to really ensure we've got shared understandings of the course materials. So a little bit about me. There's my family. I have 4 children. That was taken many years ago, so they're a little bit bigger now. We've got the one on the right holding the fish. That's Jacob. He's now a first-year primary student at USQ after doing 2 years of biomedical science. Isabel there, she's first-year nursing at USQ. Isaac's a bit bigger. He's 15 now, so I think he wants to be a rapper. And Andrew, he wants to play for the Broncos. He's my 9-year-old. So in our spare time when we're not busy at school and uni and at work, oh, and I should mention my husband, that's a bit remiss of me, isn't it? He's there in the middle, James. He is a school principal at Kingsthorpe State School near Toowoomba. And in our spare time, that's what we like to do. We go camping and fishing. We have a boat, so we're very lucky we get to spend a lot of time snorkeling. I was a teacher for 20 years, and I've been at the university now for 2 years. I'm your head of professional experience for the University of Southern Queensland as well. In my teaching within the last 20 years, I taught rural and remote from prep to year 12. I was a head of department, a head of middle school, and in system leadership roles in regional positions and state positions. So education for me certainly has given a wide variety of opportunities, and for that I'm grateful. So I'm going to hand over to Michael to give you a bit of background. Oh, and I should say, Michael.
Well, good evening, everybody. Can I just start by saying it's my absolute pleasure to be joining this group, and I really am looking forward to working with you, to helping you achieve your goals in education. A little bit about my background. I've been teaching for over 10 years. I have a master's in education in ICTE, so my interests mainly lie in technology integration, ICT pedagogies, and blended learning. So feel free to ask me specific questions about those as well. My family, not so quite big as Tanya's. Just my wife and my 5-year-old daughter who started prep this year. So, big learning curve there, but we are really enjoying it, although we are very tired at the end of the week. So, but yes, I'm really looking forward to working with you guys and hope that I can help you get through any of those tight spots or questions that you might like to ask about.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And it's really exciting, I think, to have in the team currency of teacher practice, and also to know that I actually still teach. I teach once a week just in a school to keep that practice happening. So what I wanted to do, first of all, and I just need to check that you can see my screen if I switch screens. Can you see the teacher identity screen now?
I can see it, yes.
Oh, perfect. Lovely. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's clear in how the study desk is set up, because we know that there's often nuances between different structures on study desks. So this one's set up as a tab or menu type structure. So it's not, so I hope that you like menus, but it means that you have to click on are the headings to be able to access the work. So in the communication one, the one I want to draw you to, and you guys more than others probably found it nicely, is that we have this common room that we're using tonight, and that is open 24/7. It doesn't require a host, and it is an opportunity for you to connect, to share ideas around any of your practices. And so to be able to navigate forward, you can either click on the menus to the right there, so that would take you to the Getting Started section, and or down the bottom as well, or you can jump to different parts here. So we've got week 1. If none of that works for you, you can always go to, I'll just move to that, back to the course activity tab on the left, and that will take you back to the front menu there as well. So within each weekly structure, it's set up the same way each week. And we have 2 parallel aspects that run in this course. We have the transitioning to professional registration, and they are set up with the, I guess, the frequently asked questions and processes that people really like to engage in conversation. So we talk about registration, we talk about employment, the teachers' union, and then we start talking about a whole range of processes to prepare you for employment. During the term as well, we will have people from the different education sectors, like Education Queensland and CathEd, who will make themselves available on a Zoom to talk to you about their processes and how you can clarify their expectations around paperwork. So you'll see that on the study schedule on the left as well, which ones are coming up each week. Now, in semester 1, we use recordings that we did in semester 2. So they are all available to you already for you to watch. And there's always a forum around any clarification around those transitioning to the profession. Then we have the coursework, and that sits underneath it. And you will see that we have an introduction to the focus area, and then each week we have the same things: watch, read and respond, and question. And so you'll be able to watch a video or see some slides. You'll this week you'll look at the action research as a tool for growth, and that's looking at 34 graduates and their perspective. And then there's e-activities. Now these e-activities are designed to engage you in the course materials and set you up for the activities for the week. So in that, again, you'll have the intent and you'll have the task there. And it'll give you a bit of a, I guess, an overview of what you need to do. So this week's focus is setting the scene, looking at reflective practice, but then also doing a self-audit against the AITSL professional standards and at a graduate level. Now, the reason we do that is the 2 assessment tasks within this course are designed to look at growth. Designed to look at your professional growth and an area of need. So when we're designing our first assessment task, we like you to look at an area that perhaps you haven't evidenced as strongly through your program. And so you do that action research and that plan, because then you can use that as an artefact in your e-portfolio, your assessment too. So we like to set you up by saying, okay, have a look at your readiness, then let's do an audit of the tools that there'll be in the next couple of weeks that you have and the evidence you have against the other standards. And so that'll help you make an informed choice of your focus area within assessment 1. So once you've done the activities, and again, I'll just come back to the course activity, there will be forums for you to engage in. Again, the links are in the e-activities or in the response section. And you can also access forums if you want to on the left-hand side, what we like to do is actually encourage you to go through each week's topic and through the activity, because it provides the context for what's happening. It provides a context for the particular activity and the forum. Whereas if you tend to access things from the study schedule on the left, you might miss the richness. At any time that there's a new announcement, of course, it will be added here, and that's in the announcement tabs where we'll also add the recordings for the tutorial sessions. So if you're not able to make them, we will add them into the announcement section as well. Is there any questions anyone has about the study desk? Okay, so we'll move back to the PowerPoint. So we're going to clarify today the understandings of our assessment demands, and then we're going to have a look at co-constructing briefly some success criteria for assessment 1. So with that, I'm going to give you some snippets of some previous student work, not all of it, of course, and I'm not telling you whether it's a strong example or not. We're going to look at the criteria within the marking guide or rubric, depending on the language you like to use, and we're going to identify the strengths and weaknesses to have clarity around what it is we need to evidence. As I said, it's to transition you from pre-service teacher to beginning teacher, and it's really now getting to that pointy end and that exciting part of what is it I need to know to be able to move forward. Now, we get a lot of job opportunities that also are sent directly to the university. So if you are in a particular area, some of you might only be looking for supply work, or you might be looking for short-term contracts or part-time work. If you want to share that in the registration and employment forum, when those opportunities come up or people from the human resources are looking for certain people, we can share that with them. So it's entirely up to you on the employment and registration forum. From week 1, if you want to share the type of employment you're looking for, then that will help us to direct any employment opportunities your way, but you don't have to do that. We also want to prepare. So assignment 1, as we said, we want you to choose an area of your own practice you want to improve, and we ask you to be really strategic about that. Remembering your e-portfolio, you need to evidence against the 7 standards. So, for example, if you feel that maybe standard 7, engagement with parents, is something that you've really, you don't have a lot of artefacts to support, then you can use assignments as artefacts. So you might want to do an assignment around standard 7. When you do your assignment, you create a plan for action research that you're going to future focus be implemented in your own classroom. So often we say position your internship classroom, because that is often a return placement, and say to yourself, okay, this is the problem of practice, this is what I'm going to implement, this is what it looks like, and this is what I'm expecting to see. So you do that plan. Now, we don't need you to hand in your plan. We don't need you to hand in a formal literature review or a reference list. What we ask you to do is through your 15-minute presentation, you will use a PowerPoint, and you will talk through your literature review and your plan, and then your final slide or slides will be your reference list. So the only thing we need to see is your 15-minute presentation, and you will do the action research plan, the work, or the part 1 behind the scenes. So there is an Unpacking Assignment 1 presentation that you can watch, and then there is also an Assignment 1 forum that you can post focus questions on as well. Remembering that next week we'll have a reflection opportunity around assessment, and Michael will be there to answer those questions. I'll be on as well, but Michael will be leading it next week. Then assignment 2, the e-portfolio. As I said, competence against the 7 standards. You reflect on what you've done. What I want you to do is reflect on what you've done. And for each of the 7 standards, you write a 500-word reflection, and we use a specific structure called a star. Now, you don't need to address every focus area of each standard. you can pick 2 to 3 to focus on. And in, I think it's either week 3 or 4, we will be taking you through again a example and of a star for you to be able to critically evaluate. And then there will be opportunities for you to construct one and receive peer feedback. Okay, so other things you need to organise: your provisional registration with the Queensland College of Teachers. You want to get all your paperwork done behind the scenes. Make sure you've got everything ready to go so that all they need to receive at the end is your formal transcript. And then look at the job application process, as I said. Mainly Education Queensland is the biggest employer, but CathEd and independent schools as well. We have very strong partnerships with all of our sectors, and we have many of our students already being employed when they do their internships or unsupervised placement. So, as I said before, reflective practice is the focus, and the Graduate Australian Professional Standards for Teachers at a graduate level are the tool that we use to reflect against. So we need to be able to, at the end of our program, say, yes, I can evidence at a graduate level my professional knowledge in how I know students and how they learn, and I can do that through this, this and this. We talk about how we've grown throughout the course. So really reviewing, if you're not don't have really solid knowledge of each of the standards, engaging in them will be really important. And we've got activities next week, in the week 2 and week 3, that will provide you with an opportunity to dive into 2 of them deeply, and then we will be sharing what we develop with the rest of the group. In the tutorials, we'll also focus on half of them and look at how we can evidence practice, and then look at another half and how we can evidence practice. So just remember again that we're coming out at graduate. You will then use your e-portfolio when you are employed to add evidence to then within, well, it depends on the time frame, but let's say within the first year, evidence how you have become a proficient teacher, and you will then get full registration. As you move through your careers, then you'll need to demonstrate how you move to highly accomplished and lead, with lead teachers, of course, getting, I think it's coming this year, but anyway, more pay. So it's all very exciting to be moving, but let's get clarity around the first assessment and what it could possibly look like, and whether this is a strong or weak example. So we use strong and weak examples in classrooms when we teach with students. It's a really effective way of unpacking the assessment rubric, giving students the opportunity to develop clarity around actually what the evidence of learning looks like for each standard. You also begin to learn the language of assessment so that you can give targeted feedback through a sequence of learning, and it helps students to self-monitor and also focus on the qualities of their work to be able to move to the next standard. So you might have already accessed the Assessment 1 task sheet. I've just got it there, and I'm just going to give you a minute to skim over that or access it on your study desk, because we'll need to be reflecting using the marking guide or rubric shortly. So I'll just get you. Okay, so just checking if you can just either put a smiley face or thumbs up if you've been able to find the marking guide and the task sheet. Okay, so I can see. Yep, perfect. Thanks, Shane. Great, lovely. So again, as I said, sometimes there's confusion around part 1 versus part 2. So just to clarify, part 1 is a process you go through that will prepare you for what you're presenting in your seminar presentation. Okay. So when we have a look at what we're looking for, and Michael and I will be marking these in real time and moderating your presentations. They will also be recorded, and but once your mark is final, the recordings will be destroyed, and that's just so if you want to contest anything, that we've got the evidence there to go back and get somebody else to moderate. So when we have a look at the different aspects that are being assessed, the first one is identifying the issue. So let's start with the, I guess, the strong, I'm just trying to move my chat box, sorry. If we move up to the exemplary part, where we've got the issue is described in a clear fashion. The student has identified how the issue might impact on your ability to undertake duties effectively with their particular context, specialisation and sector. It's important that you look at each part of those. Last year, the number of students that did not discuss how the issue relates to their specialisation was huge. So we couldn't give them full marks. They lost marks in that just because they didn't talk about how it related to maths or how it related to art or how it related to whatever, and drew in some literature there to do that. So for example, I might have talked about assessment, formative assessment, and how I wasn't sure how to use informal formative assessment in a maths classroom. So there was an issue in Standard 5. I've talked about how that's impacted on me because I haven't been able to differentiate my lessons quickly or in real time. And so I really want to build that understanding of what formative assessment looks like in maths, with a particular focus on, I guess, active participation pedagogies as outlined in Archer and Hughes. I don't even know what year that book was written in, but let's say 2015. So it's succinct, but it talks about a weakness. It talks about how I'm going to turn that into a strength through this action research, why I want to do it personally, and then you would go on to talk about how that impacts on your learners, okay, and your ability to ensure that they have an opportunity to learn. So that's where you put detailed and compelling arguments. So using yourself, using your learners, using your research. Then if we talk a review of the literature, so also I just need to point out there's only 5 marks for the first part. A lot of people got stuck in talking about themselves for a long period of time and left little time for a review of literature or the plan. The majority of your marks are in your literature review and your plan, so being succinct and hitting the right information quickly is imperative. 15-minute presentation might seem like a lot, but everybody says it's insufficient time. So synthesizing your information, which is one of the highest order strategies, thinking strategies you can use, is essential. The review of your literature, you need to look at literature and analyse experts' views. They're on the study desk. There will be information, and we'll talk about it in subsequent tutorials, about the difference between describing, explaining and analysing and critical analysis. So you really need to understand the difference because what ends up happening is when you don't analyse, you don't get full marks. And we have a lot of people identifying and describing, but not a lot of people analysing. You also need to look at varied views or opposing views, and then justify why you've selected to use a particular approach, and then link that into your plan. When you move into your plan, it's 20 marks, so this is the biggest aspect. So you want a plan that follows the recommended structure, and that is in the assessment 1 or assignment 1 resources and also the video. And you need to look at how you're going to overcome the issue. So you make strong links from your plan back to the literature. You critically analyse the choice and say why you chose a particular strategy and why you didn't pick other ones. You look at the reason behind the selection. And then you need to say, well, in order to implement this, these are the key resources I need. I'm going to implement it over this timeline, and then I'm going to look at, I'm going to identify key indicators. Now, often it's hard to get clarity if you say, I'm implementing this over a year. I'm going to strongly suggest that you put in your mind a 4-week plan. Okay, like the length of the internship. That you say, on this day, I'm going to be implementing X, and in 2 days' time, I would like to see these behaviours from the students, and that's supported by this literature. So specific key indicators of success. Throughout then your presentation, we're looking at a great PowerPoint that is also succinct. You've got 5 marks for that. There's tips throughout the course on how to create an effective PowerPoint. You know, visuals are good. Don't crowd with too many words because your voice is also to be used. We look for your tone, your timing, and your confidence. And that's why there is a Zoom practice room, so you can get with a colleague or a family member and practice presenting, and they can give you feedback around your timing, tone, and confidence. We need your PowerPoint to be concise as well. Now, throughout that, we're looking for your academic literacy. So we are looking for your spelling, your grammar, your communication, and your PowerPoint. We're also looking for the language that you use, how you pronounce it, and your sentence structure as you speak. So that's what we're looking for. Not much. So we're going to have a look now at a previous example, and I'm going to ask you to use your rubric and look for evidence in the sample to jot down some notes. And so we're going to be using a Google Doc. For some reason my mouse keeps disappearing. And the Google Doc is here. I am going to see if I can, I'll click on that, and I'll copy this when it opens up into the chat box. So you'll be able to click on this as soon as I get it in, if I can do it. Sorry, my mouse has just gone a little bit silly. I've got reminders coming up. Copy. Let me put that into your chat box. Okay, there it is. So if you click on that link, we should all get into this Google Doc together. Lovely. So I can see some people jumping in. I've got an anonymous pumpkin and a buffalo. So this is about co-constructing success criteria. So when we have a look at this, I've got just looking at the identify the issue, review of the literature and the plan, and the descriptors I've just taken from the exemplary column of the rubric. So what we're going to do, and you can move up and down through this yourself, but from my screen here, we scroll down, and sometimes it takes a little time to load, but we've got some slides from a PowerPoint. Now, of course, you can't hear what the person said, and that's deliberate, but we're looking just from the information that was on the PowerPoint. So we're wanting to look, and if we scrolled through, you might be saying, okay, well, has this person identified their issue? Have they justified why based on the information that you've got? So in the first couple of slides, and here we've got the issue here as well. And so what can we see here against the rubric? Do we think this is a strong or weak example? So I'm going to give you some time to have a look at that. Now you can choose to scroll through and have a look at the first slides around the issue. So I'll bring it back up to the front, the criteria 1. The issue is described in a clear fashion. I want you to dot point here, you know, clearly described, linked to the APSTs. It's a very big font, isn't it? And great typing. I'll fix that. Anyway, I'll come back and fix that up. And so I want you to have a look at either criteria 1, criteria 2 or criteria 3 and state what you see. Don't state what you don't see. And then we'll come back and have a look and decide on whether it was strong or weak. Now you can move your font size down as well. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm going to pause the recording until we come back to discuss this. Lovely. So I'm just going to stop my video just because sometimes that stops things. So when you're ready and I can see people starting to co-construct and write things down at the top, then that will be great. Okay, so I'm going to put a timer on of 5 minutes. Okay, I can see everybody starting to populate their thinking, which is wonderful. I'll give you a couple more minutes just to finish that idea. This Google Doc will remain open, and for people who are accessing the recording, they will be able to also add their ideas and thoughts, and we'll come back at the beginning of the next tutorial to clarify our thinking. Okay, perfect. So I know it's not a lot of time to go deeply into it, but from what you have just identified there, you can see that this isn't a strong example. It's a mid-range example. And through the criteria, you've certainly started to identify some of the strengths, but some of also the areas that need to be included. So when we start to consider the first one around the issue, we've got the professional standards linked clearly, but we don't have a clear indication or link to their specialisation and sector from the slides, whether that was discussed or not, you're not sure. And also there are some connections as to the impact that this might have. There are many, many factors identified, but then you're not sure also of whether they discuss the strengths and weaknesses or their weaknesses. So from that, I would suggest that there is a bit too much information provided in the slides there, that it needs to be more succinct, and you need to have clarity really sticking to that nice script of what is the issue, linking to the professional standards, linking to the literature around the impact, and linking to your specialisation and sector, and also the literature again around designing that compelling argument. When we look at the literature search, again we can see that there is a literature review done, but whether the analysis was effective in that, it's unclear around that. So from that, you would be able to state that, yes, you need a range of literature, but you also need to analyse it. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing that. Often a really easy way, rather than discussing each, I guess, reading or each theorist, is to put it under themes to synthesise key ideas and say from, you know, this body of research and these particular authors, they tended to discuss A, B, C, D, the strengths of this or this, the weaknesses of this or this. You know, the other large body of research discussed this theme, this came from these particular authors, and these were the strengths and the weaknesses. That way you can really, you can already do your synthesis, and your thinking and clarity of your thinking is really clear. Where people get stuck is where they tend to go and just break down each and every bit of literature that they have viewed, and that's not an effective way of doing a literature review. When we look at the third criteria, it's great. You've identified there is certainly a plan. The literature is not used, and there's no timeline or key indicators provided. So straight away you can see that that can't sit within the exemplary standard descriptor. And so when you start to look at that, you can turn that around and you can say there must be a timeline, there must be key indicators. And when I talk about key indicators, we want them to be specific. So think about, can I actually measure that? So a really clear and succinct action plan that was put forward was actually from an ex-police officer who had done a placement in a school that had disengaged youth. And so what he wanted to do was look at whether positive praise and close proximity increased students' on-task behaviour. And that was as specific as it was, because he said that the students were disengaged. He didn't have strategies to engage students, so it came down to, pedagogical practices. So what he did was he put 3 things in place. One was to greet students at the door. One was to praise them, but quietly, in close proximity, about something they did, and then walk away. And then he measured how many students remained on task and how many then, were disrupted. And that was the indicators that he used, and it was very, very specific and very clear. So when you start to dive down into your action plan, sometimes you can think, I just need to solve every problem in a classroom. Pick one. Be streamlined and focused, and it will make the development of your action research plan really simple, and you'll have really great clarity around how you can measure the impact of it. So that was an activity to get us into talking about the assessment, the standard descriptors assigned to the marking guide, and then unpacking an example which we knew was not a weak example, but it certainly wasn't a strong example, to help give us clarity around the look-fors and the aspects that we need to be cognizant of when we are developing our first assessment. Now, there's a second example that we're not going through today, but it is in the recording, and you can see the difference here as a comparison of the slides. Eve's change. Okay, so moving back, actually, I'm not sure if you saw that, so I'll just do that again. Okay. Right. So thanks, everyone. I can see that you've made some comments and you've looked at some of the criteria that you've seen within that example. What we can see is that example was not a really strong one, but it wasn't a weak one either. So it's sort of a mid-range example. We could see in criteria 1 that there was certainly the issue was identified and there were links to the standards, but there needed to be impact and links to your specialisation and sector. So if we flip that around, we know the success criteria, we need an issue that's clearly identified. We need to identify how that's going to impact personally and also on the students within their context, specialisation or sector. And then we also need to link to the standards and appropriate literature. When we look at the literature search, we could see that there was a clear literature search, but the analysis was not evident. And so perhaps organising your literature under themes where you've synthesised it and looked at strengths and weaknesses might assist in clarity of your analysis. In the third criteria, we could see that there was a plan, but we also needed to see links to the literature, timelines, and key indicators provided. So going through strong and weak examples is really an important strategy for getting clarity of what your standard descriptors actually look like to develop success criteria. And we always then, once we've looked at the evidence, turn that around into a list. So we'll keep this Google Doc open for the next week, and then what I will do is publish the success criteria, so I'll turn the negatives into positives under each of the criteria for the group to reflect upon. So once again, thank you for your engagement tonight. The recording will be made available, as will the slides of tonight's presentation. And please, if you have any more questions around Assignment 1, please post them into the Assignment 1 forum. Michael and I look forward to working with you, and over the next couple of weeks, Michael will be taking the lead and I will be stepping back more.